to Iran today, and the question arose, has he changed U.S. policy of never negotiating with terrorists? The president said flatly he has not changed it. He said he would not trade or negotiate for release of hostages. At the same time, he left the door open for unfreezing Iranian assets in the U.S. if hostages are set free, and he left the door open for talks with hostage takers. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Leslie Stahl is covering what the president says is not a change in policy.
President Bush has been refining his policy regarding the hostages. He now says he will talk to anyone to get an American hostage released, as long as it does not jeopardize the lives of the other hostages.
I hope I'm open-minded enough to talk, and to exercise every diplomatic channel I can to free these Americans.
The president insisted this is not a change in the never negotiate policy. Ever mindful of the failure and embarrassment of the Iran arms for hostages deal, Mr. Bush drew a distinction between talking and trading off for hostages, which he again pledged not to do.
And if there are changes taking place, signals that are shifting, I don't want to miss a signal. The life of every single one of these people is too precious for me to be sticking my head in the sand and miss some subtlety in this highly complicated corner of the world.
The president has kept up his diplomacy by phone, accepting a call from Israeli Prime Minister Shamir, in which sources say he pledged to include the American hostages in any trade for prisoners. Mr. Bush telephoned Egyptian President Mubarak and called President Reagan to brief him. The White House says there have been a series of conflicting messages from Iran. The president sent some of his own today on whether he would release the frozen Iranian assets. First, he said,
in my view, is to do nothing that will be seen as quid pro quo for hostages.
But then he added, goodwill will beget goodwill, leaving some analysts convinced that he is suggesting that if Iran helps free the hostages, he might then free up Iran's assets. The president says he's not expecting a resolution of the hostage situation anytime soon, as he put it, on this side of the horizon. Officials here say Mr. Bush wants Iran to know that he understands Rafsanjani's internal problems and he's willing to be patient, to carry on as long as it takes. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
In southern Lebanon today, suicide car bombers attacked an Israeli military convoy. Hezbollah, the so-called Party of God terrorist group, said it was in retaliation for Israel's abduction of Sheikh Obaid and warned of more attacks. The Israelis promised retaliation of their own. CBS News correspondent Bob Simon in Tel Aviv has our report.
The wreckage was so twisted it was hard to tell which car had been attacked and which had done the attacking. The crater looked as if it had been dug by a comet. The bomb, 450 pounds of TNT, was in a red pickup truck. There were two men inside. They slammed into an Israeli military convoy just a few miles north of Israel's border with Lebanon. 5 soldiers were injured, 1 seriously. A local pro-Israeli militiaman was also hurt. The 2 attackers were blown to bits. It could have been a lot worse, say the Israelis, but the Israeli vehicles in the convoy were far apart. They'd been expecting this kind of attack. Car bombing is second only to kidnapping on Hezbollah's list of preferred weapons. In Beirut, the Party of God announced that the motive was revenge. A leading cleric warned that more attacks will follow in retaliation for Israel's abduction of Sheikh Obaid. He said the suicide bomber, a man with a wife and a child, was a good friend of the Sheikh's. The Israelis had a message, too.
The message that we would like to send to Hezbollah is that by these kind of operations, they're not going to get the release of the Sheikh, or they're not going to get any of the things that they really want.
Israeli officials promised retaliation. Israeli experts in prisoner exchanges said a punitive raid would not be a bad thing for the negotiations.
It would be wrong on the part of Israel not to retaliate in some way, because indeed, it would be interpreted by all likelihood as a sign of weakness.
Prime Minister Shamir's phone call to President Bush tonight was their first conversation since the kidnapping of Sheikh Obaid. Officials in Jerusalem say Shamir emphasized that Israel is seeking the release of all the prisoners and hostages in Lebanon, and suggested that Washington and Jerusalem coordinate their positions more effectively than they've done since the crisis began. Bob Simon, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
To try and help put today's hostage developments into perspective and some context, we turn again to Middle East expert and CBS News consultant Professor Fuad Ajami of Johns Hopkins University. Professor, we know what's being said. What's the reality of what's going on behind the scenes?
Well, the reality, I think President Bush has been very candid about it. He's really laying the groundwork for a deal with Iran. We've really been talking that we will not do any business over hostages, but we must do business over hostages. The French did it, the Israelis have done it, we have done it, and I think President Bush has entered the Middle Eastern bazaar and he's now begun to haggle. And the hope is that the Iranians are ready for a deal, because we now know we must go all the way to Tehran to deal with this one.
Entered the bazaar and ready to haggle. But haggle about what?
Well, the Iranians have their own frozen assets that the Americans froze in 1979. They want these assets back. We understand the domestic crisis. I mean, President Bush is very clear. He understands the domestic crisis of the new Iranian president, the new good guy in Iran, Hashemi Rafsanjani. And we would like to make sure that if Rafsanjani is to do us this good favor in Beirut, then we know we must release his frozen assets. We understand that. He understands that.
You have in quotation marks good guy and do us these good favors.
Well, the hope, you know, is like we remember Ayatollah Khomeini, the man who wore a black turban. We look at Rafsanjani man. Now Rafsanjani is the guy who wears a white turban, that he's a dealer, that he's a pragmatist, and maybe he's interested in a resolution of this crisis in Beirut. That's the hope. That, I think President Bush is groping in the dark. I mean, that's what he's doing.
Professor Fouad Ajami of Johns Hopkins, thank you. And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, summertime concerns. Susan Spencer on new studies of bad water at the beaches, and Richard Roth on new fears of what a tick bite can do.
You are about to see the most important words in pain relief in 100 years. Motrin IB, no prescription needed. The doctor-recommended pain reliever in Motrin is now available in non-prescription strength Motrin IB. One Motrin IB is as effective as 2 regular aspirin for relief of headache and muscle ache, and much gentler on your stomach. New Motrin IB, tablets or caplets. Doctor-recommended pain relief.
Only Red Lobster could create an event this big. Lobster Fest 89. Lobster choices like nowhere else, starting at just $7.95. Don't miss out on sweet rock lobster or luscious Maine lobster. New platters like lobster and crab. Great lobster dishes starting at just $7.95. Kids dinner $1.95. It all ends August 27th at Red Lobster. Friday through Sunday, it's our weekend special. Steak and shrimp just $10.95.
What's that?
Common Sense Oat Bran.
Common Sense should tell you it takes these 4 boxes to equal the vitamin and mineral nutrition in just 1 box of total. That's more nutrition than any other cereal.
Now that makes a whole lot of sense.
Life without cholesterol. Is there? Give up the best things in life. What's left?
Introducing new Miracle Whip cholesterol-free dressing. Now the best things in life are cholesterol-free.
Thank you!
President Bush signed the heavily lobbied savings and loan bailout bill into law today. It's the most expensive taxpayer-financed bailout in U.S. history. Among other things, this bill will spend billions on trying to rescue S&Ls ruined in the wake of deregulation, mismanagement, and in some cases, outright corruption. The bailout is expected to cost each American taxpayer more than $1,000 over the next decade. New fallout from the U.S. Supreme Court's recent ruling making it easier for states to restrict a woman's right to choose to have an abortion. The heat is on in the nation's newest battlegrounds over abortion policy, the state legislatures. CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton reports tonight from Tulsa, where hundreds of state legislators from around the nation are meeting and feeling the heat.
Cheerful music, but outside in the streets, a demonstration. And inside the hall, 1,500 state legislators agonized over the big new issue confronting them after the Supreme Court decision allowing restrictions on abortions.
What gives us the right as a legislature to tell a woman what she can and can't do with her personal body?
Pro-choice speakers at this standing room only forum today said government shouldn't make that decision, the woman should.
And the idea is repellent, that we legislators can actually be competent enough to make that decision. Who do we think we are?
Anti-abortionists say the state has an interest in protecting the rights of the fetus.
This isn't about winning or losing elections. It's in many ways a fight
for the moral soul of this country.
Many state legislators, either pro-choice or pro-life, don't want to touch this, don't want to reach a verdict where they are imposing their will on women within their states. They are very afraid of this whole issue.
But it is an issue. In a California legislative primary yesterday, the one pro-choice candidate among 6 Republicans clings to a narrow lead with absentee ballots still to be counted. In Florida, Governor Bob Martinez called a special session of the legislature to consider abortion restrictions. Not all voters liked it, and not all legislators either.
There's most certainly a lot of intense activity and pressure on us.
There's been some movement toward the center.
I personally believe that abortion should be permitted for times such as life of the mother, rape, or incest.
Corder, the Republican candidate for governor of New Jersey, has modified his anti-abortion stance and says he'd respect pro-choice language in the state constitution.
They're falling all over themselves to try to say but, as they try to get to the middle.
At this state legislators' meeting, a lot of people are saying, let's not hurry on this one. Let's wait and take a longer look. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Accusations today that U.S. coastal waters increasingly are being ruined by a rising tide of sewage and industrial pollution, and that cleanup efforts so far don't amount to much more than a drop in the ocean. Medical correspondent Susan Spencer has the dirty water duty.
Last summer's repulsive tide of syringes, vials, and other medical waste shocked the public, closed beaches, and prompted calls for dramatic action to clean up the waters. But a report out today charges that very little has changed.
Last year, the first beach closing occurred on July 7th. This year, before the first day of summer, 44 beaches had already closed.
To date, there have been 80 beach closings, but the main culprits this year are industrial waste and plain old sewage.
We also load our coastal waters each year with 2.3 trillion gallons of sewage. Much of the sewage is either untreated or only partially treated.
The environmentalists called for redesign of outdated sewer systems, more restrictions on coastal development, and more controls on medical waste, which has by no means gone away. 10 states report medical waste has washed ashore this year, injuring at least 25 people, 3 of them children. All that despite a new trial government program supposedly keeping track of the stuff.
There are no provisions in it whatsoever to notify the EPA on a consistent and routine basis who's generating what kind of material, how it's being transported, and who's disposing of it.
Today, EPA officials pointed out that the medical waste program just got going, but they agreed the overall pollution problem is real.
I think our coastal waters are continuing to degrade. We have increased our efforts in coastal waters, but we still have a long way to go.
Environmentalists concede that a massive cleanup is a big-ticket item, but they warn that without major action, in just a few years, no one is going to want to spend a day at the beach. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
Confirmation tonight that some of the nation's priciest and most prestigious colleges and universities are the object of a Justice Department antitrust investigation. About 20 top schools are being asked by the Justice Department to submit data about their tuition, fees, faculty salary, and student financial aid policies. The schools deny any collusion. They do say they consult on student aid packages. They insist this is in the public interest to be consistent in assessing a family's ability to pay and to avoid bidding wars for good students.
Are your teeth sensitive? Do they hurt? Watch out for the domino effect. It could end in tooth loss. It's a chain reaction that can start with sensitive teeth, then pain, which can make you stop brushing. That can lead to plaque buildup, gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Sensodyne helps stop the pain and the domino effect. Ask your dentist if you need Sensodyne, the toothpaste dentists recommend most for sensitive teeth. Helps stop the pain and the domino effect with Sensodyne.
Beautiful, shiny, healthy hair doesn't end in the salon. It continues every day with Vidal Sassoon shampoos and conditioning rinses. Vidal Sassoon shampoos cleanse to give you shine you can see. And Vidal Sassoon conditioners add manageability you will notice. Vidal Sassoon. If you don't look good, we don't look good.
The truth is, heart specialists concerned about aspirin irritation recommend Ecotrin over Bayer to help prevent second heart attack. Consult your doctor about the only brand of aspirin that's safety coated to protect your stomach. That's Ecotrin, and that's the truth.
Uncle Charlie hasn't thought about his dentures all day, because he thought about Orifix this morning.
Orifix 'em. That'll fix 'em.
Orifix has extra hold to hold dentures tight day and night. Orifix 'em. That'll fix 'em.
For the first time in 41 years, the two houses of Japan's parliament disagreed today over who should be prime minister. In the end, the socialists lost out to the ruling Liberal Democrats. Bill Whitaker in Tokyo profiles the man who won.
He's Japan's third prime minister in 10 weeks. Liberal Democrat Toshiki Kaifu was elected today by parliament after his two predecessors were forced to resign in disgrace. Already, Kaifu is being called a caretaker prime minister in charge of a ruling Liberal Democratic Party that is losing its grip. And a weak central government here in Japan is likely to be bad news for the U.S. Even as American beef producers promote their goods in Japan this month, the newly energized opposition party, the Socialists, promise more protection for Japanese agriculture and industry. The weakened ruling party could be forced to go along. Last month, angry farmers stormed a Liberal Democratic rally, protesting American agricultural imports. All this comes at a time when a growing number of Japanese say they are fed up with continued U.S. trade demands. Prominent Liberal Democrat Shintaro Ishihara is urging his party to stand up and say no to America sometimes. Without Japanese microchips, he says, America's high-tech military machine couldn't get off the ground.
The Japanese saying that Americans are exerting unreasonable pressure on Japanese. It is rather natural that the Japanese reaction may become negative.
Some Americans say this reflects a growing nationalistic spirit in Japan.
It reflects national pride in their achievements. It also does reflect a fair amount of America bashing, of using America as a scapegoat for their own frustrations.
Kaifu promises to maintain a liberal trade policy with the U.S. The question is, does he have the political strength to deliver on his promises? Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Tokyo.
In Washington, a little help for China's leaders. The State Department officially reassessed the situation in China and said it is now safe enough for dependents of U.S. government personnel to return. More than 200 dependents were evacuated in June after Chinese troops fired on a residence for foreigners. Other Americans are still advised to put off non-essential travel to China until further notice. U.S. Congressman Mickey Leland of Houston and his party are still missing in Ethiopia. The United States is now sending its own rescue teams and planes to join the search, including a U-2 reconnaissance plane. The chairman of the House Committee on Hunger and those accompanying him were last seen Monday flying to a refugee camp along the Ethiopian-Sudanese border. Despite improving weather today, searchers found no trace of them.
Constipation is disaster, and that's the honest truth.
Jean Wright talks about constipation and Dulcolax laxatives.
I can depend on Dulcolax because it takes care of my constipation problems in a gentle, easy way. My doctor suggested that I try Dulcolax, and I did, and I was very happy.
Dulcolax suppositories can work in 15 minutes to 1 hour. Dulcolax tablets predictably overnight.
I wake up in the morning, and I get complete relief. Dulcolax brightens my day.
If they could see you now, they'd see you're having fun. Taking in the sights and playing in the sun. They won't believe that you are such a good sport. Buying all those gifts in a tropical port. All I can say is, wow, I'm having such a ball. What a friendship, holy cow. They'd never believe it if your friends could see you now.
Take a 3, 4, 7-day cruise on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
There's got to be a cure for athlete's foot.
There is. Step up to the mic.
Mike?
Micotin. It cured my athlete's foot. It's got miconazole. There's nothing more powerful than this.
Step up to the cure. Step up to the mic. Micatin.
Everybody knows the pain reliever hospitals use most is Tylenol. But Tylenol is also recommended most for everyday pain by internists, family practitioners, general surgeons, and on and on. Tylenol, recommended the most by the people who know the most.
A dramatic turn today in baseball's gambling probe of Cincinnati Reds manager Pete Rose, and amid all the fireworks, one of Rose's chief accusers said he had given federal investigators testimony that could mean trouble for Rose with tax authorities. But he insisted he'd like to remain Rose's friend. Correspondent Frank Courier has a report.
Cincinnati ex-convict and bodybuilder Paul Jansen talked publicly for the first time today about Pete Rose after selling his story to a national magazine.
I feel that, in a weird way, I'm helping him.
Tearfully recalling his friendship with Rose, Jansen talked of placing $1 million in bets for the Reds manager before turning him in.
So I made a decision to tell the truth, even though it affected somebody that I thought was my friend.
Before Jansen handed over baseball betting slips, which investigators say are in Rose's handwriting, Paulie and Pete were best buddies, Jansen said, who did everything together, even betting on Reds games.
Not to do anything to influence that game, or just because it was fun. It was fun for him.
Rose continued betting through bookies on baseball last season, Jansen said, even though he knew the FBI had begun asking questions. They'll go after the bookies, Rose reportedly told him, not the bettors.
But I don't think once did he ever really sit back and think about the consequences.
Rose, who insists he never bet on baseball and never had a gambling problem, called Jansen's remarks today unbelievable. And when told Jansen choked up, Rose said, "That thing with the tears is real sentimental." The emotions flowed today when Jansen offered his old friend a shoulder to lean on.
I'd like to give him a big hug and tell him I'll be behind him. If he can come forward and say, "Hey, Paulie, come help me."
Pete Rose still is the target of a separate IRS investigation into his gambling winnings. And Jansen says he's given federal agents testimony directly linking Rose to a conspiracy to evade income taxes. And as to where the case stands now, legal experts are puzzled. With a federal court hearing scheduled next Monday in Ohio, a baseball disciplinary hearing possible next Thursday in New York, with motions for appeals and counter-appeals pending, a final verdict on Pete Rose, Dan, may not come till long after the World Series.
Frank Courier, thanks. CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin reports tonight that President Bush has chosen General Colin Powell to be the new chairman of the Military Joint Chiefs of Staff. The first black, and at 53, the youngest man ever picked for the post. General Powell was National Security Advisor in the final months of Ronald Reagan's presidency. The Federal Reserve Board today said the nation's economy continues to grow slowly with sluggish consumer spending, weak automobile sales, and some manufacturing declines. Analysts noted part of that slowdown occurred when the Federal Reserve pushed interest rates higher to ease inflationary pressure. Since June, the Fed has eased up on interest rates, and analysts said today's report indicates the central bank is ready to lower rates further if the economy deteriorates.
Dear Malox, my daughter's dates give me Malox moments.
Hey, I'm here!
Last night was a real doozy. What a Malox moment. My stomach did flip-flops. Good thing Extra Strength Malox Plus is so strong. My doctor recommended it, and it's the strongest antacid I can buy. With teenagers, Malox is a must.
Nice house. Nice earring.
Write us about your Malox moments. Extra Strength Malox Plus. Strong relief for all your Malox moments.
Did you know that certain kinds of diet frozen foods get 40, even 50% of their calories from fat? Fat. Eat smarter. The one you can trust is Le Menu Lifestyle. Every serving is under 300 calories, helps you limit sodium, cholesterol, and is low fat. The only thing we didn't touch is the taste. Le Menu Lifestyle. Eat smarter.
There are headaches.
And the car payment is overdue.
And headaches. There's aspirin and Anacin. The Anacin aspirin formula relieves headaches better than regular aspirin.
Feeling better, hun?
Not just better, better. Anacin, better relief.
Mazola Light spread has fewer calories than any leading light. Mazola Light, the lightest of the lights.
This is the height of the season for baseball, summer vacations, and Lyme disease. The disease is now being reported in almost every state, and it's reached epidemic levels in some parts of the Northeast. Richard Roth explains how Lyme disease is spreading and causing some bad reactions.
Oh, there's one. There's a frog.
Oh, wow. Yeah, where's the jar?
It's still an adventure summer camp, but a walk in the woods this summer isn't just exercise, it's become an exercise in concern.
Ticks over here.
Insecticide and long pants are two weapons this season in the war on Lyme disease, the bacterial infection carried by a tiny tick, the illness that's now spread to 43 states centered in the Northeast.
This year we're running a rate 4 times higher than was seen at the same time last year in number of cases being reported to the health department.
The ticks thrive in wooded areas and tall grass, but dozens of carriers, and especially mice, bring the hazard as close as a backyard. Tom Moulton was bitten while gardening.
Mice feels like a bruise, a bad bruise.
The tick bite usually causes a distinctive rash, but not always. Detected early, Lyme disease can be cured with antibiotics, but its symptoms can be agonizing, and they mimic a variety of serious illnesses.
Just the body was giving out. I started feeling aches in my joints, memory, my eyesight. I thought I was becoming senile.
The newest research indicates the tiny bacteria pose a special risk during pregnancy, since an expectant mother may not know she's infected.
We have examples of the infection causing miscarriage. We have examples of infection causing death of the baby at the time of birth or shortly after birth.
And the spread of Lyme has produced a rash of concern. When a suburban New York clinic opened this summer, more than 1,000 people showed up for tests in just the first month. Less than 20% actually had Lyme disease.
Some health officials say it's almost become a second epidemic this summer, an outbreak of outdoor anxiety caused by Lyme disease.
Some people say there is a Lyme hysteria, which I can agree with in a sense.
If you think ticks with Lyme disease only bite in the forest, think again.
And manufacturers of insect repellent have found there's profit in the new suburban worry.
Remember, Lyme disease can be serious.
But Hope Graham, whose daughter Katie plays outside every day, says common sense is the best protection against Lyme ticks.
I take off all of her little clothes, wash them, and just check her little body to make sure that one of them hasn't gotten on her because they're so small.
And that's the best advice the experts have for dealing with the summer hazard. Not panic or indifference, simply caution. Richard Roth, CBS News, Greenwich Springs, New York.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. See you tomorrow. Good night.
I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, remembering Woodstock and how it affected us 20 years ago. Also, from Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger joins us on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.